If you have a big mission like me, the inner work is so important. It's also a balancing act, right? Balancing the divine feminine and the divine masculine energies within you. Energies, there's a fierceness of the masculine and a softness of the feminine, and they work together, right? We can have both. Welcome to the Story of Spirit podcast, where practical spirituality meets real life. Hi, I'm your host, Sheetal Story. I'm a psychic medium, grief support counselor, professional astrologer, and a human design reader, and of course, a law of attraction master coach. With my unique blend of spiritual and practical tools, I am here to help you align with your soul-led purpose and ignite a life that sets your soul on fire. In this podcast, we are going to explore the principles of energy, astrology, spirituality, and psychology to help you heal your grief and create an aligned life and business from the inside out. Whether you are looking to deepen your intuition, understand your cosmic design, or transform your business, this podcast is for you. Join me each week for insightful discussions, practical tips, and inspiring stories that will guide you on your journey to living your very best life. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at Sheetal Story or wherever you listen to this podcast. Let's dive in and start this transformative journey together. Welcome to the Story of Spirit podcast. Today's episode is going to read like a bit of a tutorial, if you will. I've been seeing a lot of information and titles being thrown, not information really, just titles being thrown around. And to be fair, I'm one of those people that have been talking about the rise of the divine feminine and the toxic patriarchy and the divine feminine, the divine masculine. But what do those terms actually mean? And, I understand what they are, obviously, because of the spirituality and my training, but I actually went deep diving onto the internet to kind of create some notes, if you will, so that I could be guided in this talk in a way that felt like it was a tutorial, to understand, because it's not the divine feminine and divine masculine are energies. It's not about gender at all. It is about the energies that flow through all of us. And that energy that flows through all of us is part of our design. It's the part of the way that we're made up. So if you're not understanding that, then you learn that, if you don't teach yourself that, you learn it from your mom, your dad, the people around you. And we're just noticing that we're part of a world that is not really built very well anymore, right? I mean, the system is crumbling, and rightly so. We're here at the turn of this era that is breaking down these old paradigms that were really built around a toxic masculine and a toxic patriarchy. So, all those terms, all well and fine, but not actually defined well in social media, in pop culture, to actually understand what these things mean. You'll get a better understanding of what, when I'm saying the rise of divine feminine, you'll understand what that means. And it's not to prefer, one gender over another. This isn't actually about gender. It's about energy. So feminine and masculine energies present in everyone, right? We all have them, regardless of gender, and either in the toxic or in the divine. So divine means that it's more balanced, it's more sacred, it's honoring the form in which it was meant to be, designed to be in, versus a toxic or distorted or imbalanced view of it is where it's now not in balance anymore. We have too much or not enough energy, and now it's presenting in a way that isn't really honoring the energy in which it was divinely formed. So toxic energies such as controlling masculinity or codependent femininity stems from societal conditioning, right? We obviously, come in as babies, divine, perfect, whole, pure. And we then become conditioned in these ways because we notice how our families are, or we learn how to be within our families, within our social structures in a way that then benefits us in terms of belonging, feeling safe, feeling valued, feeling loved. And, in many of my clients, from a grief counseling and a coaching perspective, they have had, it runs the gamut. right? Very loving homes to not loving homes, parents that were very loving to telling them that they were worthless pieces of shit, that they wish that they'd never been born, that they'll always be second best. There's all sorts out there. And what happens is we learn how to be like that. So, a parent doesn't just tell their child that get used to being second best because they were the first, right? They got disappointed after disappointed, and then they passed on that piece of advice to their children so that they don't get the pain that they experience themselves. But in itself, it's very painful because our divine nature is one that anything is possible, that we can do anything. So when you're told something that goes against your divine nature, then it's repressive, right? Or we become conditioned, which I love that term because it means that we can become unconditioned. We can come back to our true self. So these terminologies, I want you to sort of think about these traits and characteristics in your life and, within your family spheres, within the social structures of your where you live, your government. We're in 58 different countries around the world with this podcast. So there's many different cultures. And in these cultures, these traits and characteristics vary very, very greatly, right? And we know within us what feels right, right? We know when it's not inherently right that women should be property. It's not inherently right that men are treated at a very young age as sissies or babies or wusses if they cry or they show any emotion. Like that's not right. We all have the right to have emotions. We all have the right to feel safe and to feel seen and to be loved as who we are. But again, we come into these conditioned families that have passed on these traits and characteristics from generation to generation. And these traits and characteristics can become very distorted during times of real hardship, like famine, the Great Depression, war. There's not a lot of time in war and famine when you're running for your life or trying to stay alive for feelings, right? For emotions, for, I just want to be as I am and dress the way I want. You know what? Like get moving because we're going to die. So that was not afforded, to there are generations back where that was not something that was afforded to them, that they did not have the luxury of being in their self actualization, their purpose, feeling as they wanted to feel, dress as they wanted to dress. It was literally just survival. And through that survival, then we are then also trained in ways that train us out of our true being. So it is our job now in this time and day and age where we don't have that. We're not running for our lives. I mean, there are places in the world that people are running for their lives in this moment in time. And I want to acknowledge that. And there are places in the world where there is still famine, where there is still horrible things going on in the world. And likely, if you're listening to this podcast, you probably have more than most, right? You probably have electricity. You're probably thinking about your intuition and spirituality. You probably wouldn't be feeling following me otherwise, and this wouldn't speak to you otherwise. So these things then tell me that you are in a place in your life where you are thinking about these things, that they are important to you, so you have a level of safety around you. And for me, if you've been listening to this podcast, healing is such a big part of moving into our life lessons, right? You're only going to be able to rise successfully in your life to the level of grief you are willing to heal. You will only rise in success in your life to the level of grief you are willing to heal. So let's heal, shall we? And part of healing is understanding these concepts that are around us. I think a lot of times, I know it's in my human design that if I can label it and I can understand it and I can research it and understand the whys behind it, it helps me to move out of it a little bit easier or notice it more and have a name for it, have a label for it. And with the human mind loves to label things, right? This is you, this is me, this is what we are doing, this is what I have, this is my diagnosis. We're always kind of striving to label it. I was talking to a dear friend of mine and she's like, "Oh, I have this diagnosis. I have this thing that when I think of a random word or I just blurt out a word." And I said, "Oh, I've had that. I'll just Like I'm learning a different language in this moment, and all of a sudden, this word will just from a different language will just come out of my mouth, and I'm like, "That's interesting. I was just thinking about this word," and she's like, "Well, it's a label. You know, there's a name for it in psychology." I was like, "All right." Okay. I just accepted that this is how I think, you know? But like she researched the label because she's got it herself. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Another example of this is I've always had this weird like heart thing that it just skips a beat every now and again. And I remember asking my friend in elementary school, I was like, does your heart like skip a beat every now and again? And she's like, oh, yeah, that happens all the time. And I was like, oh, okay, not a big deal. And I can catch it. It's almost like it goes beat, 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 beat. So it's almost like it resets itself, right? So it's not a normal heart rate, right? But again, I asked my friends, everybody's like, no, it's normal. That's the way it is. And I just kind of accepted that about myself. And then in my 20s, I was extremely fit. I would go to the gym. I was in the best shape of my life. And I met my significant other. We were working out at the gym together. And I got really dizzy. I would get dizzy just randomly. And again, people are like, "Oh, I get dizzy." Yeah, sure. It's probably you got up too fast or whatever. I'm like, "Oh, okay, it's normal." It's like the worst awful thing, when you compare yourself to your friends and your friends are like, "Yeah, yeah, that's normal. That happens to me too." I fell off the treadmill actually because I got so dizzy, and my husband luckily was on the bike beside me and he saw what was happening and he caught me. And he said, "You need to go to you need to go to the doctor. You need to figure what this is out." And I said, "I'll go if you go," because he had an infected finger. He wasn't gonna go, such a dude. But, I could say I was also, being, such a dude too, because I was like, "No, no, my friends, this is normal." So we both decided to go to the doctor. He had to get, like, major antibiotics. I actually injected into his finger because it was pretty bad. And then, the doctor's like, "Actually, you have something here. We need to elevate this now to a cardiologist." So I was like, "Oh, okay. I guess I have to sort this out." And then went to the cardiologist and they're like, "Yeah, it's more than just like the first thing. Like it's actually pretty serious. We're going to have to elevate this for more testing and stress testing and all the things." And I was like, "Oh, it's not like everybody gets." I remember asking him like, Everybody doesn't get their like heart skips a beat?" He's like, "No." I literally really thought that. And yeah, turns out that I have an irregular heartbeat. And if it progresses, I will need a pacemaker and it can stop at any time. I just have to stay healthy and take care of my heart health. And I could live with this till a ripe old age, or it could take me out. So I often will say with my friends, if you're hanging out with me, if you know how to use a defibrillator, you might need to use it. Hopefully, you never have to use it. And it also gives me a very high likely chance that I will die of a heart attack. And at the time, I remember it freaked me out, right? I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And I had a friend who was in EMS. She was a paramedic. And she's like, Sheetal, people die of this. Like, I have taken people away who died of it. And I'd say, how old were they? And she's like, well, they're all old, like in their 80s. And I was like, oh, okay. So people live to an old age with this. She's like, no, but it takes people out. I was like, okay, thanks for the vote of confidence. But also, yeah, okay, I need to be aware of this. And I can't let it rule my life. And actually the doctor said that when I went back to for my last appointment, because I was like, I could die of this. He goes, Sheetal, you were born with this, like this is an irregularity that's born into your heart. So you've had this your whole life already, and it's not been an issue. And they said, well, I mean, it kind of was an issue because I almost fell off a treadmill. He goes, yes, but now we understand why it is. And you just have to take a deep breath when you start to feel your heart, beating like that, slow down and just become very conscious of it and just take a deep breath. It's okay. He said, you're gonna live to an old age with this. You were born with this. You might even die of something else, he said, but you can't live your life afraid of your heart. I was like, ooh, that's interesting. I've never actually shared that story very publicly at all. So I have an irregular heartbeat, and I think why I'm bringing this up now in this divine feminine, divine masculine talk is really about that. The more you know yourself, the more you can accept about yourself. And, all these terminologies and all the things that we're going to talk about today isn't about labeling people and creating more division in the world. This is more about understanding yourself, understanding what is happening in the world so that you can bring more balance into your life, into your family, understanding why people are the way they are because no one wants to suck at life. You know? That's going to be a soundbite. No one wants to suck at life. But really, no one is trying to be stupid. No one's trying to be angry at life or, bitter. It just happens to us. And unless we have awareness, we can't change it. So I know if you're listening to this podcast, you likely have a lot of awareness. You have a lot of understanding of things. You're interested in them, which is fantastic. It's a lot more than the rest of the world. And the world is waking up. There's more and more people going to become aware of these things. So these powers, these energies are within all of us, right? And we all have access to these energies, and they're powerful. So the divine masculine it has traits of like focused on action, clarity, strength, protection without aggression, right? The divine masculine is not aggressive. It's actually protective, and it's very loving. It's assertive, it's emotionally grounded, it supports growth and stability, and it is constructive. It's building up, right? It wants to build up, and it wants to take action and acts with accountability. So, some words that describe masculine qualities are logic, reason, action, being firm. Survival is also masculine, loyal, adventurous, rational, strength. Also, sacred masculine words are present, aware, structured, holding space, discerning, decisive, and having a purpose, having something to do in the world. Right? It's deeply present. It's not judging. It's very supportive. It has discipline. It's focused, logical, confident, and that protective thing is really important because the divine masculine is actually wants to protect. It's honest, it's accountable, it has integrity, it's humble, has boundaries. Boundaries are considered masculine, offers stability, is security, and responsible. So when we have that divine masculine in our world, we don't have to do that from a woman's perspective, or if you identify as a woman. We have both of these qualities. So you're going to hear the feminine in a moment, but the masculine is something we have access to as women. And what has happened over time, because the masculine, I would say like the men, the gender or our partners, because gender, partner doesn't have to just be the masculine, it can also be the feminine, so this is about not just cisgender, we're talking about gay, straight, by all of it, right? So when your partner doesn't have the masculine, or you don't have a partner that has the masculine, then we have to step into that masculine role as women. So we then take on that, taking care of ourselves and making money and being, the breadwinner, then taking all of that on. And so, and again, that's a choice, right? We all have the choice to do that for ourselves as women. We can take on that masculine, but when we are in a divine union with somebody, we can let go some of those things, and we can be in our feminine. We can be supported and taken care of and loved, while we also take care of and love our partners as well. And I'm going to use the word partner because this isn't about men and women. This is about relationships. So even within, let's say, lesbian relationships or gay men relationships or transgender relationships, there's always going to be these elements of the feminine and the masculine. And one partner will have more of one than the other that they exude, that will give comfort to the other partner, who will then be able to be more of one and the other. So we all have this natural tendency to be in one more than the other, but we've got to find that balance within ourself. So the feminine then also has these beautiful qualities about them that we all have. Again, this is an energy, so even men can have the feminine qualities too. But if we stay with the masculine for a moment, the divine masculine is very beautiful, right? Think of someone who is very protective, who's focused, logical. Money is considered masculine, right? The physical things are considered masculine. Our right side of our body is considered masculine, right? The left brain is considered masculine. Left brain is logical, linear thinking. Right. So it's that doingness is masculine. So we all need that, right? We can't be passive. We can't be just sitting, back and letting someone feed us a bunch of grapes. I mean, that might be nice in some moments, but we have the masculine too. We also have to have the doing nature in our, if you're a woman, both. You need to have both, right? And as a man too, you need to have both. The feminine qualities that I'm going to talk about in a moment are absolutely needed. But when the masculine is turned up too loud, it becomes toxic. So the masculine in its wounded is forceful, dominating, manipulative, overthinking, overdoing, controlling, and demanding. Do you know any women that have these traits and characteristics, right? I actually know a lot of women in corporate who are like very much like that, very demanding, very controlling, dominating, manipulative. I think even like a lot of female bullies or bullies that are or girls or women tend to have these very wounded masculine traits about them, right? They almost step into that. And a bully isn't born, it's created, right? It's the environment. So when we have a bully in our life, or we are the bully, because we can be both, you're the villain in someone else's story, that we turn those things up too loud because there's parts of us that are not, it's compensating, right? It's overcompensating for parts of ourselves that we don't feel good about. So the wounded, we call it the wounded masculine or the toxic masculine, but I think a better word for it is the wounded, because it's a wound, right? And it becomes toxic, yes, but I don't, again, no one's trying to be toxic, right? No one's like, I'm going to be toxic today. No, we actually become that because we're wounded. So I'm going to use a very loving term instead to call it wounding. And then I'm going to call the higher traits and characteristics sacred. So the sacred traits and characteristics, again, of a masculine is being present, aware, structured, holding space, discerning, decisive, and having a clear purpose, right? Like there's a path to go forward. It's action oriented. Whereas the divine masculine now is pushing it, it's forcing it, it's dominating it, it's manipulating, it's overthinking. It's almost like, again, there's this lack of trust and confidence in itself. So it's got to overcompensate for that. So when we look into the divine or the wounded masculine, this aggressiveness, it can also be avoiding and withdrawing. And it's abusive, it's unstable, and it can be very competitive, too competitive. So some competition is healthy, right? It helps us to be better, get to our highest level. If you make it about your identity, now it's becoming too competitive. Right now we're in the toxic, now we're in the wounded. So instead of having that competition that's like, I'm better than you and I'm going to show you that I'm better than you and I'm going to win at all costs, that's now wounded masculine, right? It's because they're compensating for a lack of confidence, right? You can see that. So the wounded masculine then gives rise to the patriarchy. Now, the patriarchy itself is centers men at the center of it, and men are dominant. And there's submissive men and dominant men in the patriarchy. So there's a hierarchy of control within the patriarchy. And men are centered in the patriarchy. Men's power and control, they rule absolutely. And everything else is power over, right? So the masculine, the patriarchy is toxic. It is a wounded masculine, and it's power over everything. So it's also power over other men. So a lot of the patriarchy is really, really painful for men, because if you are a sensitive man who has some of these feminine qualities we're going to talk about, you are considered, a sissy, you're a crybaby, you're actually emasculated, and you don't belong. Right. So then there becomes that wounding on that side of the fence. So the patriarchy really sees to have power over. It's about control, power, and manipulation. It centers men at the center of it, and it's powerful men. And it also centers men with money, with capital, with notoriety in some way, whether it's good look, whether it's powerful, whether they have money, whether they're intelligent. There's something that then they are special. Right. So not everybody's special in the patriarchy, only a select few. And the patriarchy then gives rise to billionaires, because then there becomes this class divide, because there's a top few at the top, and then there's all of the rest of us at the bottom. And women can never be centered in the patriarchy. That is not a thing. Now, women do try to climb into patriarchal structures so that they can have power and control as well, that they can be part of that structure, but it's not actually any power or control for them. It is just false power, right? They perceive that they have some power within it. I mean, you can just look within US politics, all these women that have been propping up some of these US politicians, even though there is so much evidence mounting that these people have done really terrible things, and they've climbed into the patriarchal structures for money, for notoriety, for that I'm special, I'm somebody important during this patriarchal rule. right? So it's like, I'm not here to change the patriarchy. I'm here to burn it down. I'm not interested in working within a system that is fundamentally broken, that is not actually here to support anybody but a select few at the top. And we've been divided on purpose so that we are busy fighting each other while the patriarchy at the top is pulling everything, right? I mean, this is not a conspiracy theory. Like, this is actually, you can see how this has become. So we at the bottom of the scale of the patriarchy are trying to make money. We're trying to pay our bills. We're not having anything beneficial happen to us because we are the working class. The working class fuels the patriarchy, and then it continues to funnel money up the chain into the hands of select few. So this is why I always say money in the hands of heart-led women are going to change this planet. I am so passionate about money in the hands of women because it does change community. It does bring cultures together. It changes families. It really will change the structure of the patriarchy into the opposite, which is the matriarchy. So let's now move into the feminine, and then I'll explain what the matriarchy is. So the feminine is an energy, right? The divine feminine energy is sacred. It's nurturing, intuitive, receptive. It embodies emotional intelligence, creativity, the power to feel and flow with change. It is the power of being, wisdom, nurturing both self and others, and it is extremely creative. It is in the right brain, which is the creative brain, but it's actually the side of the brain that when we have grief or trauma, it defaults to the right brain. So the corpus callosum, which is the hemispheres that the way that the brain comes together. So it's sort of the part that bridges the left and the right hemisphere together. It breaks down during intense grief and trauma. So we then move just to the right brain. So that is a place of imagery and music and feeling. It's a feeling nature. So when you're trying to speak in deep grief, it can sound like gibberish, right? It can sound distorted because it doesn't make any sense because you're not actually accessing the left brain. We actually go to the right brain, and it's all about feeling. So that's why in grief counseling, I go more to the right brain in terms of music and pictures and meditation and getting us into that side of us. I have many friends that do art therapy, which is so beautiful during grief and trauma. It's a really wonderful therapy because it accesses that right brain, right? The feminine side of the brain. So that divine feminine side, when I said money is masculine, but the flow of money is feminine, right? The flow is all about the feminine. So this feminine side to us, these feminine energies that are available again in men and women. This is not about gender, right? The feminine energy is intuition, nurturing, healing, gentle, expressive, wise, patient, emotional, flexible. When you think about men having these qualities, like, isn't it freaking hot? Right? Like, honestly, it's so hot because you rarely see these aspects in a man, where they're so nurturing and gentle, expressive and emotional, because the patriarchy has really trained that out of men, right? You're a wussy to have that. Like, that's the label, right? You're a pansy, whatever you want to call, like, those names. And it's terrible. I mean, it has really made men fear these qualities or hide these qualities, right? So the sacred feminine is expressive, intuitive, connected with love. It's compassionate, free flowing, radiant. Some other words are grounded, receptive, reflective, strong as well, right? If you've never had a baby, women are very, very strong. We made a person. We're a portal for new souls to come into this world, right? Now, boundaries are also part of the feminine. We also have to have boundaries with that. Empathy, compassion, magnetic, right? To attract in. That is the feminine. It's supportive, it's vulnerable, it is authentic, it flows with life, effortlessly, surrender, open, trusting, creative. So you can see these energies are a little bit more passive, but they don't mean that there's nothing happening, right? Because I think passivity has a bad rap, in society. They think passivity means nothing's happening, but it's actually not true. It's about flowing, surrendering, and allowing. So there's a lot of that kind of flow like energy with women. And like, I mean, it's divinely natural for women. So there's more of these energies in women. But again, we can be trained out of that nature because we have to take on these responsibilities, right? We have to become accountable. We had to have these, roles that we played, that we were having to do the things for our family because we were not able to be in our feminine, and because we're asked to play roles, right? And not play roles in terms of like you're being asked, you just take those roles on because you want to be someone that fits into your family group. So I have a client who father left at a very young age, and they were expected to do for themselves. And it's interesting because when she's describing for herself, she's like, oh, we were very responsible, we had very little rules. And I said, to me, that feels not right, because little children are meant to be dreamers. They're meant to play and be curious and have fun, like, and joyful. And you're saying you're so busy, like you're following the rules. She didn't have a lot of rules. She was hardly home because she was holding down so many jobs, and they had to be their own masculine. And as a result, my client became very masculine, went into a very masculine industry and became a very good at what she did, and also did very well within schooling and all the things. She's very masculine. And one of the jobs that we're doing now, one of the work that we're doing together, is helping her step more into her feminine, because the feminine feels very uncomfortable for her. Right? She's so used to being in the masculine. And to be honest with you, I think I have about 4 or 5 clients right now on my roster that this is the work we're doing. So you can become safe to be in your feminine, because you're so used to being in your masculine as a woman, because that was what was expected of you at a very young age. You were asked to perform, you're asked to do the thing. Why didn't you bring home 100%? What do you mean 95%? Where's the other 5%? Right? That is the masculine, the doing, the performing, the competition, right? You have to win all the awards. And that is not the feminine. The feminine is, did you have fun? Did you feel, supported? Did you feel in purpose? What part of it was the best part? It's not about winning the prize, right? It's actually about the experience of it all. So the wounded feminine now is repressed truth. It feels unworthy. It's shame and guilt. Shame and guilt are used as weapons, by the wounded feminine. Weak boundaries, codependency, right? Codependency means I need you to complete me. One of the most toxic lines in any movie ever is, you complete me. And that is absolutely false. If you wait for someone to completely complete you, you are codependent, meaning your regulation matters because somebody else is regulating you. So when you're not in connection or relationship with someone, you are dysregulated, you are half a person, you do not exist as a whole real person. How awful is that? Where did you learn that? Right? And again, we don't, when we label these things, we can see it for what they are, but we don't, no one's walking around going, I'm gonna have a person. No. You know how this presents? As, do you like me? Is everything okay? Did I do everything right? Do you still want to go on another date? Are you still into me? Are you like, is everything, do I look good today? What do you think? Do you like the way I dress? Like, all of those things are codependent. You're waiting for somebody to tell you that it's okay, that you're a good person. You're waiting for permission that you are a whole person, and you were born a whole person. You've just forgotten, right? You've just forgotten who you really are. So this rise now, well, we're not done with the feminine, because there are the other wounded feminine pieces: insecure, needy, as I mentioned, codependent, manipulative is in there as well, inauthentic, over emotional, and victim, feeling like I'm the victim. Someone has done this to me. Right. So the wounded masculine is controlling and aggressive. Well, then the wounded feminine, or the wounded feminine, I like that word, is over emotional. I'm the victim. Oh my gosh. And I'm going to even say the martyr, right? I did this all for you, which I think is also a bit of like that masculinity turned up too loud. I did this all for you, and you don't even appreciate me. Like, you're doing it because you want love. You want that appreciation. You're not doing it because you enjoy it, or you feel like it's the good out of your heart and it fulfills you. You're doing it because it gets you something. And that is the wounded feminine. So, you might know that. You might see your mom in that. You might see your sister in that. You might see your friend in that, or you might see yourself in that. And I just want to send so much love and blessings to you, because this is not something, we sign up, like, I mean, our soul signs up for it, of course, but it's when you realize it that you can change it, right? It's when you realize it, you can bring healing to these parts of you, because that toxic feminine side, the distorted, manifests as manipulation. And again, it's because there's something missing within us. We don't feel like we're good enough. It's a lack of confidence, right? So, whereas the toxic or the wounded masculine is restrictive behavior, like they're trying to be tough and suppressed and aggressive. This includes dominance and violence and homophobia and repression of emotions, which often leads to loneliness and lack of emotional intelligence. So, we're seeing a real epidemic right now for men who are feeling very lonely. And then there's these groups coming up that are just banding these men together in the toxic masculine about, the women. It's the women's fault. You know what? Like, and we're going to beat down the woman, and we're going to come together in our toxic, our wounded masculine, and we're going to band together. But actually, it's an epidemic of loneliness. So and then they also goad each other on, and it's horrible. I mean, there is an epidemic right now of loneliness in the world because we're so disconnected from ourselves. This is why I feel like intuition development is the ultimate Teflon for the patriarchy. Because when we are connected to ourselves, both men and women, gender, there is an undeniable truth. We are so connected to our soul. We are connected to the universe, and we have so much support for ourselves in spirit, right? We have our ancestors, we have our loved ones in spirit, we have our guides. You are not alone. But this epidemic of loneliness is a distorted view of the world, that and a lie that you are completely disconnected from everything. But the truth is, there's a disconnected from self. So anytime I hear a client say that they're feeling lonely, my job is to connect them back to their soul. My job is to really come back to it. So, when you think about it, and I just can heard spirits say, do you see now why your mission is intuition? It's that connection back to our true self, where that will be the Teflon for loneliness. It's the Teflon for the patriarchy. It is the rise of purpose, because our purpose comes from our spirit, right? This is the work, is to come back into connection with ourselves. So the wounded feminine manifests as manipulation, emotional coldness, right? So we're disconnected from our emotions, codependency or competitive behavior toward other women. I always can see this. Like, I have zero competition, with other women in terms of like astrologers, human design readers, grief counselors, psychic mediums. I actually love community. I like to bring together all these women so that we can learn from each other. I love masterminds. I love brunching with my mediumship girlfriends. I ask them how they're doing, and I send clients their way because I'm overflowing in abundance. You can't get into my calendar for 6 months now. So if somebody needs something and they're like, it's urgent, I'm going to say, here's a list of all the people I trust. Please find somebody that feels right to you, because it's not me. It's not meant to be me, because your urgent need means I'm sorry, it's not me. My client base is not about urgent need. Unfortunately or fortunately, that's not my lane. So that is community. Like, that is actually the feminine. The divine feminine is community and collaboration, and that emotion and intuitive and emotional intelligence. And it's magnetism. Like, this is the rise of the divine feminine. And why the divine feminine has to come up is because the patriarchy has so distorted the other way. It is so, like, think of a teeter totter. It is so, the toxic masculine, the wounded masculine, is what has become so prevalent that we need to bring up the divine feminine in order to have balance again, to have that harmony of the two. So the rise of the divine feminine is necessary to bring back balance, to bring back equilibrium, to bring back harmony between these two things. And the matriarchy, I'm sure you've been seeing lots of posts. I have been, but I think the algorithm has pinged me very well, is the rise of matriarchy now. I keep seeing all these posts, matriarchy now. The matriarchy centers children. So whereas the patriarchy centers the men with the power, the matriarchy centers children and family. So there are four species in the mammal group that are matriarchal by nature. So that's elephants, whales. There's a number of whales, dolphins, orcas, or the whales, and humans. And I think bonobos as well are also a matriarchal nature as well. So there's five. And so there's some species of dolphins as well that are matriarchal. And in the matriarchal society, the females then are centered, right? So the females are the ones that there is a leader, an alpha female, but there's a hierarchy within the females and they center the children. So the children are the ones that are kept safe and the family units are what's kept safe. And it is run almost communally, right? So it's not just one alpha female. There's actually sort of a communal, understanding of this is what's best for the tribe. So when we think about a matriarchy, it also centers community for resources being shared as well, which, like, hello, right? So everybody gets to eat. What? How amazing is that? That everyone gets food and shelter and we're all taking care of each other's children and we're all rising together in community. Like, that is what we came from. But when we started to industrialize and start to move into cities, that didn't work out as well. So we started to move more and more and more into the patriarchal section. And what happened then with that, of course, technology separated us. And then there was this illusion of separation. And then, of course, competition keeps us separated as well. Because when we're separated, we are not powerful. We're separated from self, we're separated from each other, we're in competition with each other. So, where is our power as women? Right? When we think back to like the witch trials, for example, the witch trials weren't actually about, burning women with powers. It was actually a land grab. It was a wealth grab. It was a way for men to take power away from women who were powerful. And we just see this through history where there has been this fear of women coming into their power because we are so powerful. They're scared of us is what I'll say with this, because we have so much, so many gifts. And I said, now with technology, there's no need for us to, I'm going to say have men, but I think that's not the way. We need to have, like, we need to bring men up too with us, because men are also suffering under this patriarchy, right? The patriarchy, remember, only favors a few. And if you're not on that favorite few top list, which you're not a billionaire, millionaire, guess what? You're down in the basin with the rest of us. So this masculine wounded energy that has just been running amok, we need to bring up the feminine. So this is why I feel like the movement now is the rise of the divine feminine. And remember, the divine feminine, it has its power in being, wisdom, nurturing both self and others. And it's the power to feel and flow and be in creativity. But we also, as the feminine, have the masculine too, right? We're going to be fighting for ourselves. We're also going to be advocating for ourselves. We're in powerful positions, and there's women rising up through the ranks in companies and entrepreneurship and government and all the money, banking, all the things. And I'm also noticing that there are some really beautiful men that are stepping into power too, that are holding the line for the women too, right? Because if you have privilege, then it is your job to extend that privilege to those who don't have it, so that we can all rise together. This is the age of Aquarius that's coming in. Now, the age of Aquarius really isn't going to come in, like I said, for until 2143 to 45. In that time between now and then, which is not very far away, you think about that, that's 120 some years from now. So it's actually a generation or two, right? Like really one generation that is going to come in. So we're in the corridor of birthing the age of Aquarius. Aquarius is about, healthcare for all. It's about the advancement of technology to take care of everybody, not just at the advancement of a few. It really is humanity rising and technology rising to serve humanity. So I think it's really interesting. It's fascinating when I've been thinking about technology and what's been presenting itself. Like, I was having a conversation today with someone about the electric car. And I said, it just blows my mind, because the electric car requires all these rare earth minerals. And these rare earth minerals require us then to mine and dig up Mother Earth. And these mines are not kind to Mother Earth, right? They're just ripping up all of these places in the world to try to get these rare earth minerals. And they're rare. So that means that they're finite. They're not infinite. So, and these go into batteries that only have a certain amount of shelf life to them. So once these batteries are complete, I mean, I think there's going to be a technology that's going to come along to help recycle these batteries. But the cars itself are very heavy. There's just a lot in these cars that are like going to be junk. Like it's not as sustainable as people think. And then to have an electrical grid for everyone to be in driving electrical cars, we're not even close to having that much electricity surging through our lines, let alone a grid that would support that. So I'm so confused as to why this is an environmental best alternative, because we're not churning out gases into the atmosphere. Okay, so that's going to save the ozone layer and our greenhouse gases and things like that. So we're not going to warm to that degree. I understand that, but we're trading one for another, right? We're just trading one thing for another because there is toxic chemicals even within electric cars. They're not giving off exhausts, yes. So we don't have the greenhouse gases, but all this to say is that we just seem to like technology is coming along and it doesn't seem to be better. I think it just makes things easier, but it's not actually getting better for the earth. Another example is AI, right? AI is actually very, very bad for the environment. It takes so much fresh water to nurture AI and keep AI running. And it is using resources that really should be allocated to us. If we continue to use AI continues to grow and we use this much fresh water, we will be out of natural water within the next 10 years. So it is awful. Absolutely, this technology is not helping anybody. This is not actually humanity rising together. This is just another form of the toxic patriarchy. This is just another form of someone owning all the power, and then we're buying into that power. We're stepping into those power structures and willingly giving our energy. And I have to say, I mean, like I did a whole podcast on AI and how it is, stuffing out intuition. I have to be honest with you, I am moving away from AI in so many ways because I did notice my creativity sap, my writing is like changed as I started to use AI to support me in those pieces. And I'm like, no, you know what? I want to go back to authenticity. I have a friend in my friend group who has actually given up social media for a month, and she had to go to a flip phone, and she was showing us her flip phone at dinner, and I was like, that's really cool. And she's like, yeah, it really changes the way you think and your mind. Like I can't scroll, I can't look up anything, there's no apps on it, it's just a phone, it's just a old school phone. I was like, wow, how has life changed? She goes, I'm sleeping better, I have more connection with my significant other, I'm so present, I watch the sun shine and the sun go down. It's like, it's just like my brain is rewiring. And I went, wow, how much would we change if all the technology was wiped off this planet today? Oof, right? Like we can do that to ourselves. Like we can actually start to turn off some of these things so that we focus back to ourselves. So, how do we move back into balance, right? I think I want you to also think of it as like you are nature. And when you come into balance for yourself, more harmony within yourself, because some people don't like the word balance, that's fine. So, if you come into more harmony with yourself, what does that feel like? How do you cultivate both energies together, regardless of gender, right? This is for personal growth and holistic health. So, inner work. I talked about this early, right? The inner work is so important, observing and managing reactions to toxic environments rather than acting out. So, notice yourself, right? Notice your awareness, notice your triggers. A trigger is just an unmet need. So, when you feel these, parts of yourself coming up where you want to beat somebody down, or you want to be in anger, or you want to be in competition with someone else, where's that coming from? Why are you feeling that? Because you notice both the wounded masculine and the wounded feminine come from a place of like, there's a lack of power. There's a like lack of confidence. Where's that coming from? Because you were born whole, perfect, and pure. So somewhere along the way, you felt, no, I don't have any power. I'm not I'm not worthy. And that is an illusion, right? That was created because your soul knows you're 100% worthy. It's the mind that has created that illusion. And the mind creates illusion based on experience. So that the illusion was created because of what happened in your past. Whether it happened to you or happened to someone around you, you had that feeling. So I tell this story, you may have heard it before, but it's one where I was seriously bullied in patrol camp when I was in going from grade 5 to grade 6. So I was 11. And I, being a Virgo, I love being in control and telling people what to do. And in our school, we had patrollers. So there is a very busy crosswalk that was in front of our elementary school. And in order to keep the kids safe, we would have patrollers that were grade 6. So our school went from K to 6. And so the patrollers were grade sixers that would have reflector vests and a stop sign that we would have behind our backs. And then there'd be one person across the road and one person on the side closest to the school. And then we would be responsible for our sides of the road. So we'd look and we'd say, there's no cars, you'd say clear. And then as soon as the other person said clear, then you'd put out your stop sign. So you got to stop traffic, which of course I loved that. And so I wanted to be a patroller. I knew it ever since I'd gone to that school since grade 3. I knew in grade 5 I wanted to put my name in the hat to be a patroller. And my teacher actually approached me and said, I think you'd be a really great patroller. Would you like to go into the patrol team? So they choose all the patrollers in grade 5, and then you sign on, and then you choose a patrol captain. And then that patrol captain has to go to patrol camp. And you learn about the rules of the road and safety and all this stuff. But then you also do all camp stuff, like there was archery and treasure hunts and all sorts of stuff. And so, I mean, I'm an East Indian, first generation Canadian girl. So my parents have not let me out of their sight even for a moment, right? Like I have never slept away from home. Like my mom sleeps next to me. Like it was like I've never ever had even a sleepover. I mean, yes, I did have a slumber party, one slumber party by the time I was in grade 6. So very, very protective parents. Anyways, so I back step a little bit. We were all on the patrol team, so all the grade 5s get together, and the teacher, who actually ended up becoming my grade 6 teacher, was in charge of us, and he said, "Okay, you guys have to vote for a captain. Does anyone want to put their name forward?" And I'm like, "Me." Put up my hand. I'm like, I want to be patrol captain, because the patrol captain got to do the schedule, and then also if somebody wasn't there, they would fill in, and they were also responsible for having conversations with people that weren't up to snuff, or you were managing the dynamics of it. I was like, I'm ready. I loved it right from the get-go, right? So I was unanimously voted patrol captain, which I was so honored. I came home beaming, like, Mom, everybody voted for me. And as the kid that didn't feel like there was a lot of belonging in my life, that felt huge, that everyone saw me and saw me as the person who would be the best choice for this. So I got to go to patrol camp. And in patrol camp, I was put into a room very randomly with 3 girls who knew each other, which is, you think about how crazy that is, that they are all 3 patrol captains from different schools, but yet they're friends as well. And they're very, very wealthy. So I was not wealthy. My mom would say we were upper or lower middle class, is what she would say. But my mom sewed my clothes and she cut my hair, and we were very thrifty. But then we also got to go back to Malaysia and India to see my family every 5 years or so. So my parents were very selective with how they spent their money, and my mom was very, very good with money. So my clothes were not, top of the line, obs. Whereas theirs were, they had these designer bags and all the things. And so, anyways, I was lumped into a room with them. I just happened to be standing with them, and the lady says, you 3, you know each other, and you're going to be the 4th in that room. And they're like, yeah, okay, no problem. And they seemed nice enough at the beginning. And then when they saw my luggage and my clothes, and they're like, you're poor. And I was like, I don't think I'm poor. And they're like, you're poor. Ew. I can't believe you're in our room with us. And I was like, okay, like that doesn't seem very nice. And I've never been treated like that before, but I knew better. I was like, no, you don't get to treat me like that. I'm a Scorpio rising, right? Like, you're not going to mess with me. So then they started being really mean to me, because like even the way I would study and all the things, it would very annoy them. And they're like, you're so annoying. You know what? Like, you're a waste of skin. You should kill yourself. And I was like, what? They would, like, it was such serious bullying. I would cry at night. We were in bunk beds. and I would like first face away from them and I would cry and I just wanted to go home. And I ended up asking the counselor to go home. And so I had to go see the dean of the school. And he was this sweaty guy in a bad suit. And he's like, if you, here's the telephone, but if you go, you're a quitter and you don't get to be a captain. And I'm like, I am really smart. Like I want to, I want to do well, but I deserve to be a captain. I was unanimously voted. And he's like, no, you quit this school. I'm going to tell your principal and you're not going to be captain anymore. And I was like, I took the phone and I hung it up and I said, I'm going to pass the test and I'm going to stay. He goes, good. Now get back to your dorm. I was like, these kids, this guy was in charge of kids. Like, oh man, if I could go back now and, anyways, and so I couldn't tell my mom. I felt so stuck. I would cry all the time. The counselors were so mean to me. They're like, "You deserve what you got." I was like, "What?" They just thought I was. Yeah, I was absolutely horrified. Anyways, long story short, I passed the test with 90s in the 90s, and I went home. My mom picked me up. I cried, and I said, "I never want to go back. I never want to go to any camp again." And she said, "No problem. You don't ever have to go." So that created a belief in me that I didn't know until I became an entrepreneur. And in that entrepreneur piece, where now I get to be seen, because when we succeed, when we do well, when we're noticed for our talents, we get bullied. So when I was trying to show up, I couldn't show up. So that showed up as passivity. It actually showed up as procrastination. And I had a huge insecurity. What will people think of me? I was so scared to even publish my Facebook page because I'm like, people are going to think I'm a fraud. All these people that know me are going to be like, what? You're all of a sudden you're a psychic? Really? I'm like, I've always been a psychic, but I had to. My coach is like, do it. You're going to do it. I'm like, okay. And I pressed it. I was shaking and I pressed publish on my Facebook page and I closed my laptop and it went away. And when I came back, I had hundreds of comments from people saying, congratulations. Oh my God, finally you're out with this. Or remember when you were at the school carnival as a kid and you were the palm reader? I was a palm reader in grade 5 at the school carnival. I had a huge lineup of people who wanted to get their palms read. I took out the Encyclopedia Britannica and taught myself how to read palms. Don't ask me now. I don't know any of the lines. It was like I internalized it for that one time and then it was gone. But that really, my friends back then even showed up on my Facebook and like, yes, congratulations. We knew even then. And I was like, oh, I guess showing up doesn't so bad. So I kind of gave myself evidence that I can show up and it's okay, that I'm not going to be shot at. But then I did get shot at, not shot at in terms of, proverbially, like metaphorically. People thought, because the name of my page at the time was called Story of Spirit, and that's the name of my incorporated business, Story of Spirit. They thought it was a writing page. And so they're like, you're a phony, this is supposed to be a writing page. Why are you, are you even a psychic? And I was like, it says it right in the title with my picture. It's right there. I don't know who you think is duping who, but like, you should just learn to read. And I was trying to explain to them and they would not hear. And I ended up just blocking them. And I realized, oh, I got to block them. And I continued to procrastinate and have this horrible feeling of dread. And then it wasn't until I did a summit where we got to meet our inner child that I found that I met my 11-year-old self from patrol camp. And she just wanted to protect me. So the inner work is the most important part of rising up to the levels of success you want to experience. And if you have a big mission like me, the inner work is so important. It's also a balancing act, right? Balancing the divine feminine and the divine masculine energies within you. Energies, there's a fierceness of the masculine and a softness of the feminine, and they work together, right? We can have both. So when we allow ourselves to find that balance, we can also change with the people that we're around as well, which is something I don't think a lot of people talk about. So when I met my husband, and for I think first time ever, I was around somebody. Well, that's not true because I did have an ex-boyfriend that was very, very like in his divine feminine and very beautiful person. But in my husband, there's this masculine quality about him that he wanted to be he is very protective of me, but also believes in me. And I think might be a little scared of me as well. Not a bad thing, I suppose. But there's this feeling of like, I feel very protected. I feel very safe, when I'm around him. And so then I can be in my feminine. But when I was in corporate, I was very much in my masculine in those settings. So I think as women, I'll just speak to it from women as from my experience, but I know masculine men have this too, is that when they're around people, those qualities can help them also step into those things. So good or bad, right? Good or bad. So, where I have clients that have a very wounded mom, when they're around their mom, they step into their masculine, right? They're the ones that are doing, they're the ones that are, taking care of their moms. So that masculine comes out when they're with their moms. And when they're with their dads, if the dad doesn't have that masculine trait or qualities about them, they'll still be in their masculine with them. So I actually have a client right now who is in her masculine with her father and her mother because they rely on her to do everything for them because that's the role she played as a child for them. And she's still doing it. And it's not actually serving her in any of her relationships now or her business, especially in her business. So she needs to actually step into her feminine and had to be safe to do so. So she's in a new relationship, which that's coming together. Now we also have to bring that healing back to her inner child, bring it back to herself as well. So we have to find that balancing act. And some people are going to bring out more of those softness, but also sometimes more of those fierceness and notice where that is. Who brings out more of those masculine qualities and who brings out more of those feminine qualities, and notice how that feels. And then deconstructing the conditioning. So challenging cultural stereotypes, the patriarchy that promote distorted versions of these energies. Like the idea that women should be skinny and no facial hair. Yeah, well, anyway, no body hair, and to have like these prepubescent bodies. Like that's actually pedo culture, right? Like this is not how women are. Women's bodies grow and change. They're soft. They have to have curves. They're meant to have curves. We have a uterus. Like you're not actually, it's not normal to have a flat stomach. You have organs in there. But yet we've been really, the stereotype and the pictures and stuff that we've been fed as little girls. And we didn't even know they were being manipulated, these pictures. There was Photoshop even back then that are not real. I remember when I was 18, I wanted to model when I was young. I had friends that are like, Sheetal, you should model. You'd be amazing. You'd look, you have these features and stuff that you should model. And my mom would be like, nope, absolutely not. You're not going to be used by the industry. She's like, it is like, you're just a commodity. She said, I'm not going to let you become a commodity. And I remember being so mad at her, right? I wanted to model. I wanted to feel pretty because I never felt pretty. So when I was 18, a friend of mine said, let's go to a model call. You're now 18. You can do what you want. Your mom can't tell you what to do. And I told my mom I'm going for a model call. She's like, oh, I guess you're old enough now. I was like, yeah, I am. And I went to an open model call and I got through the first round. I remember sitting there. My friend did not, unfortunately. And so I'm sitting there and they're telling you what's going to come next and how things are going to go and all the things. And I remember thinking, they don't know. They don't know that I have stretch marks. Oh my God, like I'm going to be humiliated. If I get through the next round, I need to tell her, I need to come clean with who I am so she knows. Talk about imposter syndrome, hey? And so she said, if anyone has any questions, they can come up and line up. And she was a no nonsense. She was beautiful model herself, but she worked for this modeling agency as a scout, and it was a total cash grab, but whatever. And so I remember going up to her and I said, I have a question for you. She's like, yes. And I say, I'm a little nervous to ask it. She's like, "Ugh, like, don't waste my time. Can you just ask it? And I said, I think you made the wrong choice with me. And she said, what? She's not used to people questioning her. I said, I have stretch marks. And she's like, are you kidding me right now? I said, no, I have stretch marks. And she's like, you think Halle Berry doesn't have stretch marks? You think Linda Crawford doesn't, or Linda, oh my God, Linda Evangelista doesn't have it. Cindy Crawford doesn't have stretch marks. She's like, I have stretch marks on my ass. I have stretch marks on my knees. Are you kidding me right now that you think women don't have stretch marks? You think models don't have stretch marks? I was like, no. Like, I really did not think that women, like skinny women, had stretch marks. And she's like, sit down. I want you to go to the gym, to get healthy, to be your best self when you show up at the next level of scouting. And she said, just show up as your true self, Sheetal. And I went, okay, okay. And I swear, I think I was scared because if I was to ask her, are you sure? I think she would have punched me. She was I think she was based out of New York, and she was like dark hair, like porcelain skin. She was so freaking beautiful. And I remember leaving there like flabbergasted, like absolutely flabbergasted. Like the earth is round, like for real. Like this is what? There's women that have stretch marks and it's not me. I was so sensitive about my stretch marks. I shot up like 3 inches when I was 14, 15, and I got stretch marks above my knees. And then I also got them on my bum. And because of my skin color, it's very obvious, right? They look like white lines across. I did not wear shorts that went above the knee for at least 15 years. Like it wasn't until my 20s that I would wear shorts above my knees because I didn't want anyone to see those stretch marks. I was so ashamed of my body. Where did I learn that? Why didn't I see, pictures and examples of true women? Because it doesn't sell, right? They made it such a unattainable standard because that is what sells. Everyone wants to climb into the patriarchal structure, right? Everyone wants to look like that, right? And so when you make it unattainable, we make it so elite. That's what people want. They want elite, right? That's not true. That is the toxic patriarchy. So we're bringing back the rise of the divine feminine. We are showing what real women bodies look like. We are talking about the things that are actually happening in women's world, in the world of women, especially now with all the perimenopause and menopause talk that's out there. And then we're showing real women's body. Like, oh, I just love this rise of the divine feminine. And we're here to overthrow the patriarchy. I'm like burning it down. Let's be honest. We're burning it down because I'm not here to rebuild a structure that is fundamentally broken, that is not centering women or children, and doesn't care a damn about women and children's safety at all. It actually it, it's the predator, right? It feeds on women and children's innocence and as a commodity. And I'm done with it. I'm not buying into it anymore. And the intuition piece is how we become absolute Teflon. And we're going to build a new structure. I don't know what that new structure looks like. I know that as a matriarchy, we are the only one in the mammalian matriarchal systems that men lead. We are the only one, right? In bonobos, in elephants, in orcas, in dolphins, they are all led by women. So we have fallen so far off our true nature. So now it's about bringing back the rise of the divine feminine, both in men and women. And this is about bringing back the rise of the divine feminine so that we can find balance, right? Because the masculine has just run amok. It has just been so turned up so loud. So now we have to turn down the masculine, turn up the feminine, and find the balance once again for all of us. So I hope this has helped you understand masculine, feminine, patriarchy, matriarchy, what all these things mean when you see them in social media, when you hear people talk about it. And none of it is about hate on men. I really hope you heard that in any of this. It's not about hate on men at all. If anything, the men need to come with us because they are also being victimized by this horrible structure. There's only a few, very few men and a few select women that are being advantaged by this, right? The power being concentrated in the hands of a few is patriarchy. And I'm so happy to burn down that structure. I want to use all those swears, but I'm trying to keep it clean on this one. I'm very, very passionate about this. You're going to hear more about these things, but I want you to understand these because as I start to talk about the divine feminine and the rise of, and in the masculine and the toxic patriarchy, and I really think, as I'm saying it too, I want to use the wounded masculine and the wounded feminine because the toxicity is the byproduct of it, but it's actually coming from the wound, right? So notice where the wounds are, but we have to heal them in ourselves in order to heal the system. So where is the work for you? right? And I've given you a few of my stories to see where they've come up in my past, where I became quite wounded because of these experiences and it created beliefs about those experiences. So it's until you heal that, until you go back and reframe those experiences and see what it was actually trying to teach you, you will continue to be controlled by them. And we are no longer being controlled, my friends. So wishing you a beautiful rise of divine feminine in your life, a stepping back into your intuition in your life, knowing that your softness is a superpower, that your emotional intelligence is absolutely such a superpower, and that you are here at the right time and the right place in history to help out this huge movement. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Story of Spirit podcast. I hope you have found inspiration, support, and practical insights to help you align with your soul-led purpose and live a life that sets your soul on fire. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share it with a friend. Your support helps us to reach more listeners and continues to provide valuable content. I sincerely appreciate every share, and I know it is how most people find me. It is because caring people like you have shared me with them at the right and perfect time. For more resources, insights, and to connect with our community, please visit us at www.sheetalstory.com and follow us on Instagram at sheetalstory. Remember, your journey to a more aligned and vibrant life is just the beginning, and I am here to support you every step of the way. Until next time, stay aligned, stay inspired, and keep shining your beautiful light. This is Sheetal Story, signing off from the Story of Spirit podcast. Here's the legal ease that's required by our lawyers. This podcast and the YouTube channel represents the opinions of Sheetal Story and her guests to the show. The content should not be taken as medical, psychological, or financial advice. This series is informational and entertainment purposes only. Because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional, your mental health dream team, your financial advisor, or anyone else that's an expert in the field in where you are thinking of making big choices in your life.